Hello, and welcome to episode 12 of where I'm coaching you into action. The minimum leads to maximum. That's what we're going to talk about in this episode. The minimum leads to maximum. And one of my clients that I think learned that so well over time was Kathy. So, not me, although I needed to learn it as well, but another Kathy. And I'm going to read her testimonial. It's surprising how small changes in meaningful ways result in healthy new habits that can support me through life. I consider a 12-week program with Kathy my superpower. A big aha moment for me was when I realized how a healthy nutritional foundation was pivotal for me to achieve my personal and life goals. I've lost weight and I have more energy. So I want to highlight Kathy's testimonial, especially the part where she said it's surprising how small changes in meaningful ways result in healthy new habits. Kathy, like myself, initially would kind of fight the coaching her into the minimums. And that's what this episode is about, coaching you into action through committing to the minimum. And Kathy always wanted to commit to the maximum. And sometimes I let her do that. And then when she got back on, the next week's call or the next week's module, she then could see, okay, I think I really tried to do too much. I tried to commit to too much because that's natural, right? We want those results. But over time, and Kathy's taken several programs, she learned the power of the minimum. And she has had maximum results, to say the least. They've been amazing in terms of weight loss, more energy, feeling more balanced. And she's taken more than one program. And she's given her brain time to ease into these new changes. And then that has resulted in a more balanced life and in having habits. So let's dive in. When we're motivated to make a change in our health or life, whether that change is losing weight, having more energy, feeling less stressed, creating more time for self-care, whatever that might be, we tend to want to take big action towards that desired result. We want to do all the things, do the action, do the steps every day, or at least Monday through Friday. Because in our minds, we think taking those actions daily or very frequently will help us. We think doing it more frequently right away will help us get those results more quickly. And yes, doing a repeated action or step more frequently does get us to a result. That makes sense, and our brains like and need repetition. We need repetition to form habits, that's true. And we want to form habits around taking these steps. We want to form habits around the actions that will lead us to losing weight, having more energy, getting better sleep, having more self-care. I help my clients with any and all those things if that's their goal. So we work towards forming habits around the actions that will lead them to results. I want them to form habits around their thoughts as well, and that's another episode. But when we want to form habits, those things we want to do without thinking about it, it's something we repeat, then the opposite is actually true. We don't want to start out trying to repeat it every day. We don't want to start out with acting like we have that habit and we're trying to do the maximum. We need to do the minimum at the beginning, not the maximum. When we try to go too far, too fast with a new action, our brain thinks we are in danger and we sabotage. And I talked about this in a previous episode, but we're going to review it here before we get into the coaching you into action. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever started a new diet or a new exercise routine or new whatever, and it was difficult to stick to it long enough to see the result that you wanted? So it's March when I'm recording this, and if you made a New Year's resolution, at this point, are you still doing all the actions for it? that you did the first week of January? If you're one of my clients, you are. If you have been one of my clients, even if you didn't set an intention or a New Year's resolution, you know how to go about it and how to take action. So you're probably still in action with whatever your goal was. And if you're not, then you get in touch with me and you do another program so that you can self-coach effectively again. Doing the minimum brings about the maximum. And we also need to do other things too around our actions, like keeping them pleasurable or associating them with pleasure, like I've said in previous episodes. When we push ourselves too far, our brain gets into high alert and we tend to sabotage. Now, I'm not saying we never do an action that we don't particularly like or that we never push ourselves, but there's a right way and a right context to begin to do that. And at the beginning of our new thing is not the time. In the beginning, we want that follow through. We want follow through over time with those new actions. We want follow through. When we follow through with something we said we were going to do, we get that spark. So whether that's planning 2 healthy lunches, working out 2 times that week, stopping work and eating lunch, chewing our food, when we follow through with those little actions, those things we want to do, we get that spark and our brain likes it. And that is how habit loops form. You know that like button on Facebook or your social media stats, how you get that dopamine hit, that pleasure when you see that like button, or if you're in business like me and you're like, oh my gosh, yay, look at all those downloads on my podcast. Or it goes the other way. Oh my gosh, I didn't get very many likes. We want that. We need that positive dopamine, right? We're going through, we see, oh, look at all those likes I got. All those social networking features on these platforms are there to give us that hit, to make us feel better, to repeat our behavior. Facebook and Instagram, they have all these complex ways of making sure that we stay on their platform. They want us to experience pleasure. So when we stop to watch that video, the algorithms or whatever they're called are like, ooh, they like that kind of content. Let's give them more. So they'll scroll through and become addicted and find pleasure being on our platform. We repeat what is pleasurable. So Facebook wants me to stay scrolling. So in my news feed, Facebook is not going to give me posts and videos and advertisement about math because they know that's not going to keep Kathy Warren scrolling. So they show me things I've told them to by how I like them, how much time I spend looking at them, what I'm searching. It's actually kind of creepy, but it's not by accident. Pleasure, habit loops. We repeat what is pleasurable. We want that immediate pleasure around our new action, around those steps we're taking to lose weight, around those steps we're taking to have more energy, to get better sleep, to feel less bloated after a meal, to take that time for self-care, whatever it is you want more in your health and life. We start with the minimum so you can get the maximum benefit later. Our brain wants to seek pleasure. I know I'm repeating some of the same concepts over and over because for many of us, this is a new concept, okay? Doing the minimum that you can pleasurably commit to in the beginning is what leads you to the results you want. I see it time and time again in my own life and with my clients. And it goes against what we are initially thinking, right? Because we think, no, I need to make those healthy lunches 5 days a week. I need to go to the gym at least 4 or 5 days a week to get the benefits. So remember, in my previous episode, I talked about how it's important to start small to end big. So that's why I coach my clients on the minimum that they can pleasurably commit to form that habit. So let's say if you're consistently working out 3 days a week and your end goal is you'd like to consistently work out 5 days a week, then your minimum goal for that next 7 days that you've listened to my module or been on a call with me might be to commit to 4 days a week for a few weeks. If you're already really consistent at 3 days, then add 1 day for several weeks. Then we're going to add the 5th. Now, if you sometimes work out 2 times a week, and then sometimes you skip a week, and then maybe once you do it 3 times, I will coach you to the minimum. And that might be that you're doing it 2 times for several weeks, and then we add a 3rd time for several weeks, etc. When we try to go too far from our own normal, then our brain freaks out. And especially if we're trying to do too many things far from our normal, right? Like we're trying to form all these new habits and take all these new actions. Now, there are times we need to go in a little faster, and I get that too. So I coach around that by setting you up for success, by associating pleasure with your action, and by having a lot of accountability and support. All the steps I talked about in previous episodes. So I've taken several clients through this sugar detox program that I have. And at one point, there's a 2-week period that we are not eating sugar. Now, as a sugar addict, and I don't use that term lightly, it's hard to think about going 2 weeks without it, which is why we go about this slowly at first in this program. We're adding in medium sugar foods and then low sugar foods, and we have coaching and accountability and support for that. We start out with the minimum, and then we end up without it for 2 weeks so we can reset ourselves and just see how fabulous we can actually feel without it. More on that in another episode. But then we're able to get to that maximum 2 weeks without it. And then we start adding in gradually some other healthier sugars, etc. But I'm not waking up one morning and saying, I'm done with sugar starting now. And I'm also going to start working out 5 times a week. And I'm also going to start meditating. We don't try to do all of this at once. So this is how I coach my client into action on these minimums to the maximum. At the end of a module, so if you're doing a self-guided program, you have a module that you listen to. And at the end of the module, you have this master action guide and its questions. And I'll ask you questions about the minimum. If you're on a coaching call with me, I'll ask you at the end of the coaching call. I will ask you, what's the minimum amount you can pleasurably commit to in the next 7 days? Now, in the beginning, they're going to give me the number of times they want to end up with, right? Say things like, 4 times, or 5 times this week, or, 4 times before I go to bed, or I want to have 4 days without sugar, or whatever. A lot of times they're giving me what they think their brain is just going to that end result, right? Like, yes, I want to start doing this. That's why I paid for this coaching program. That's why this is important to me. So let's just do it. And so I will ask questions. So maybe it's, yes, I want to start going to the gym 5 times a week. Well, how many times are you going to the gym now? And again, as I've said in previous episodes, I'm not saying this in a judgy way. We're just getting curious. How many lunches do you take now that are healthy? Whatever you think healthy is. How many times a week now are you stopping at lunch and breathing for 5 minutes? How many meals now are you currently chewing your food and putting your fork down in between bites? How many times now do you stop and actually do something for yourself in the day? How many nights a week now do you go to bed before 10? So let's figure out what your baseline is. And if the answer is just 1 or 2 or not at all, then we're not going to set your action step for that next 7 days to be doing it 4 times. And this is really hard for us at first, right? And so I'm coaching my clients and we're doing all the things that form habits. We're setting the right kind of action. We're checking our thoughts. We're getting the right kind of accountability and support. And they start to see that their minimum is turning into the maximum, and it turns into the frequency that they wanted to end up at. But we start with what we can pleasurably commit to as the minimum. I always tell them, you're just committing to the minimum. You can always do more. I'm not limiting you. I'm not saying, I only believe that you can get your butt to the gym 2 times this week if you haven't been going at all. And you might actually be pushing yourself. And then we get into that competition thing again, right? All these wrong mindsets. I'm going to do it 5 times. But you can always do more. And then you post that in the GroupMe, this texting app we had, or you report it on our next coaching call, and that will feel great. You report that you did it. But at the very least, we want you to post a report, yes, I completed my action steps. And hey, I actually added an extra. We don't want you on the call or reporting in the GroupMe texting app or looking back at your master action guide of goals for the week and having to say, no, I did not complete my action steps. This does not help your brain form habit loops. I want you to say, yes, I committed to doing 2 times and I did it. I don't want you to have to say, I committed to doing 5 times, but I only did 2. That subtle, I didn't do it, makes a big difference in the formation of habits and in your thoughts around your ability to do it. However, when you say, I did it, I completed my action steps, then the habit loops form, the brain gets that spark, just like it does when someone likes your post or something on social media, and it's easier to repeat that minimum again. I did that. That felt great to say I did it. So I'm going to do it again and again and again. And you repeat it more times and it feels good and it starts to become who you are becoming and what you do and not something you are forcing yourself to do. There's such a big difference here. Such a big difference. My clients usually say around week 6 or so, oh, I'm actually doing blank 3 to 4 times a week and it feels good. It doesn't even feel hard. The minimum leads to maximum. We start with the minimum, but we don't stay there. That's the key. So you tell your brain that it's okay. I'm going to start out with 2 times, but I'm going to end up with 5 times. I'm going to start out with 5 minutes. I'm going to end up with 25 minutes. You're not always just going to work out 2 times a week if your goal is to do it longer. You're not only just going to take 3 minutes to stop and breathe once a week at lunch if your goal is to do it longer. You work your way up to more times. But if you start trying to do the maximum way too far, you're going to have a hard time maintaining it. And you'll burn out. And then you'll have all those negative stories about how you can't stick with something. And your brain is going to look for evidence to show you that that in fact is true. This is real. This happens. I've said it before, but my basic program is a 12-week program. So you have time in this container with me to help you take the sustained action that leads to results. Yes, just doing something a few times a week may not make a difference in 2 to 3 weeks, but it will when you're doing it 2 to 3 to 4 times a week for 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. But we don't start out with the end result right away. So let me give you some examples. Let's say you would like to eat more whole food and less processed food because either from listening to one of my modules on nutrition or listening to the experts out there or whatever, for whatever reason, you feel like, okay, I want to try that out. We're going to coach you through the minimum. So right now, if you never really eat whole foods, then the minimum that you can pleasurably commit to might be that you're going to eat 1 whole food in a day. You're going to eat 1 food that doesn't have a chemical from it, or 1 meal. Or maybe you're going to commit to just 2 days of doing that. Then when you come back to the next module, if you're in the self-guided program and I'm asking you in the module how your action step went and you're checking it off, you say, I did it. And then your brain starts to think, oh, this eating more whole food is not bad. I did it. It was pleasurable. I'm going to do it again next week. I'm going to eat that 1 food again. And then I'm going to report to Kathy that I did it. And then I'm going to get that spark. Then maybe the next week I do it 2 times. So let's say you want to start walking or working out, and maybe you're only walking sporadically. Maybe 1 week you walk 1 day, the next week 2 days. You're going to commit to walking 2 days. And then when you come back and I ask you, or you post in our GroupMe text, I did it. I walked. And then I give you that dopamine hit like Facebook does, and I hit the heart and I like it, or I say, good job. Then your brain is like, oh, wow, I got rewarded for walking that one day. I want to do that again. That felt good. So you walk 1 day or 2 days a week the next week, and then you come in and you report it. I did the minimum. Then maybe you commit the 3rd or 4th week to walking 3 days that week. And then you come back on the call and you say, you know what? I committed to 3, did that, no problem. And I actually added 2 more days. Great. So you're moving forward slowly. Maybe you want to start doing Pilates and you're not doing it at all. So you commit to 1 morning a week and you do 10 minutes one morning. You come back and report that. I give you that like, that hit, that dopamine, that pleasure. Your brain is like, oh, cool, I did Pilates. Next week, I'm going to do it another morning. The next week, 2 mornings. Maybe the next week you do it 4 mornings because you're really into this coaching thing and you're doing all the right steps and you're helping your thoughts and you're reporting it and it's starting to become who you are. You are someone that does Pilates. Maybe you want to relax at lunch and you've never even thought of that before. A couple episodes ago, I shared Sonia's testimonial about that. You start small. You set a timer for 2 minutes and you realize in that 2 minutes how great that felt. And then you come back and report, I did that. I turned my phone off or moved it away from my desk and I just sat there with my lunch for 2 minutes and I breathed and oh my gosh, I noticed that afternoon I wasn't as bloated. Then you commit to that pleasurable 2 minutes again the next week. Your brain may say, oh my gosh, that was so great. And you may be telling me on the call or in your master action guide, oh my gosh, that felt good. Next week, I'm going to do it 4 times. No. You're not. You're going to do it 1 time for the 2 minutes. That's what you're going to commit to, the minimum. If you end up doing more, that's even better. But you're reporting on the minimum. If you want to stop looking at screens before bed and you're literally always staring at your phone right as you fall asleep, then you're going to commit to 1 night turning that off. And then you're going to get that dopamine hit. I did it, Kathy. And I'm going to say, great job. And I'm going to give you a heart in the GroupMe, or I'm going to give you all that great feedback on the coaching call. You're going to check it off in your master action guide. The minimum keeps you moving forward. If you want to explore new careers, maybe you're frustrated in your current job, then you're going to spend like 5 or 10 minutes looking on Indeed or something. You're going to start out with that minimum so that you're not overwhelmed. If you want to read that book, you're going to start out with 1 night. Self-care. Okay, I'm going to take 10 minutes, whatever it might be. You start with the minimum. I get excited, right? Because it's exciting when people come back and report success. Your brain likes that. The minimum leads to the maximum. So let me ask you, think about something you're wanting to do. And I asked you to do this in episode 11. What's your goal? It's going to be much easier for me to coach you on the podcast if you know your goal. And actually, it's much easier if you just take one of my coaching programs. But until then, let me ask you, what is the minimum amount you can pleasurably commit to in the next 7 days for this action that you're thinking you'd like to take? You've probably got one in your mind, right? What's the minimum amount that you can pleasurably commit to so that you're going to get that spark and you can tell yourself or a friend or you can email me, I did it. I completed that action step. Bing! The brain perks up and it all starts with that minimum. So what's your minimum? Do it and then celebrate it and then do it again and again. And before you know it, that minimum is going to lead to your maximum result. Remember, keep it simple, keep it real, and I'll catch you in the next episode.